What's going on, everybody? Thank you so much for tuning in to Ben Travels TV. And coming up next, we are in Cigar City, Tampa, Florida, as we give you guys a full tour of the Ybor City Museum State Park. We're going to do a deep dive into the Cuban history in Tampa with the founder, Vicente Martinez Ybor, to Jose Marti, Paulina Pedroso, and General Antonio Maceo. This is going to be a good video, guys. Stay tuned. All right, you guys, welcome back to my channel. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and hit that bell so you get notified every time we drop a new video. All right, we are in Tampa, Florida, but we are continuing our series touring Ybor City, and we're going to head to the Ybor City Museum and State Park. This place was founded, right? This was the cigar capital of the world, and the founder was Vicente Martinez Ybor, who was born in Valencia, Spain in 1818. And then in 1832, at the age of 14, he moved to Cuba to avoid military service and took a job as a grocer clerk before learning the cigar business. In 1856, Martinez Ybor founded his own small cigar manufacturing company in Havana, Cuba, and began selling his own brand. The brand became popular, and Martinez Ybor's factory was soon producing 20,000 cigars a day. But in 1868, the 10 Years' War broke out as Cubans fought to win independence from Spanish colonial rule. Martinez Ybor sympathized with the Cuban cause and was correctly accused by Spanish authorities of quietly providing funds and assistance to Cuban rebels. In 1869, he received word that he faced imminent arrest, so he and his family hurried and fled to Key West, Florida. All right. And then he had a cigar manufacturing company as well and sold his brand in Key West and then moved it to Ybor City. When he came to Ybor, he encouraged a lot of Cuban immigrants to move. He was an entrepreneur and a businessman. And what you see here are casitas. All right. They're small homes for cigar workers, which are provided. If you want to do a tour for these, you can get a tour with a ranger, which is through the museum that we are about to see right now. All right. Now, this is awesome. This is history that is preserved here in Ybor City. We're going to jump into a lot of history, so you guys sit back and stay tuned. All right, you guys, we are approaching the Ferlita Bakery, also known as La Joven Francisca Bakery. It was a centerpiece in the community. The residents living in the city in the early 1800s were mostly comprised of immigrants coming to establish themselves in the blossoming Ybor City. Francisco Ferlita was one of these immigrants, building the bakery in 1835. The bakery stayed busy, making between 300 to 500 loaves of Cuban bread each day. The bakery not only provided bread for residents, but also served as a casual gathering place for residents. It is said that locals would stop by the shop to catch up with old friends or even have a cup of Cafe Cubano. 1922, the bakery was destroyed in a fire, but it was rebuilt, adding a second brick oven to increase the bakery's production. The same brick ovens can be seen in the museum, preserved as a piece of the building and family story. The building produced bread until 1973, when it was converted into a museum to celebrate Ybor City's culture and history, as you can see. And on the wall is the official Ybor City seal. The four flags, American, Spanish, Cuban, and Italian, represent the first settlers. The side wheeler, the Hutchinson, brought the first Cuban cigar makers in 1886. Shown at the bottom of the seal are the tobacco leaves and a twig of the guava tree, which played a part in the creation of the cigar center. And the center is the official flag of Ybor City, shown as the center shield of the Ybor seal. The cigar in the center of the flag memorializes the industry which launched Tampa into a viable industrial center, and also honors the Jose Marti cigar, which concealed the message to Gomez, which led to the revolution of 1895 and freedom to Cuba.
Brings us the story of Vicente Ybor and the industry that he brought that would turn Tampa from a small fishing village into a large city.
Vicente Martinez Ybor was looking for a place to move his cigar factory from Key West and Havana to somewhere else, likely in Florida, but possibly either Texas or Alabama. But just having a place that was in this country to manufacture cigars, but still using Cuban tobacco, that was very important. So Martinez Ybor came to Tampa and he talked to the Board of Trade, and they ended up buying 40 acres of land just outside of what is now downtown Tampa in what is now Ybor City. So he opened up his first cigar factory, a small wooden factory, in 1886, completed the work on his large brick factory the following year, and luckily for him, that factory is open when a fire in Key West destroyed his main factory there. He decided not to rebuild the Key West factory, but instead basically cast his lot in Tampa. And from that, we had a huge cigar industry that grew not only in his namesake Ybor City, but also in West Tampa, bringing thousands and thousands of Cuban, Spanish, and later Sicilian immigrants to Tampa, really changing the city almost overnight.
Ybor died in 1896 at the age of 78 in Tampa. His remains are in the St. Louis Catholic Cemetery in downtown Tampa. But his legacy lives on as the person who brought a major industry to the Bay Area that would soon put Tampa on the map. Vicente Martinez Ybor, not just Hispanic history, he's Tampa Bay history. At the Tampa Bay History Center, I'm Anthony Hill, ABC Action News.
All right, so Vicente Martinez Ybor came to Tampa in 1885. The climate and affordable land were attractive to Ybor, and it was there where he would set up the company that would become one of the largest cigar makers of Cuban cigars in the world during the late 1800s. There was an influx of immigrants moving to the area in search of work. All right, so Ybor saw this as an opportunity to employ his factory with employees. He believed in keeping his workers happy, providing good pay and affordable housing options. A true businessman, he also established other businesses, including a hotel, brick factory, and the first line for a streetcar through the city. The city grew to over 3,000 residents within a few years. I think they had like 300 to 500 people before, and was known as the cigar capital of the world, which would transition into a worldwide phenomenon. By 1890, the city's population had grown twofold to roughly 6,000 people, with a large percentage comprising of Cuban immigrants, 15% of which were Afro-Cuban. By 1900, Ybor City's manufacturers produced the highest quality hand-rolled tobacco products in the world. Yes, Ybor City surpassed the gold standard of Havana, Cuba. This renaissance helped coin the city as the cigar capital of the world. Sadly, Ybor would not live past 1896 to see his hard work gain such acclaim. Not long after, other prominent Latin cigar brands joined Ybor's manufacturing monolith in Tampa and grew even more. By the time the roaring 20s, the 1920s rolled around, cigars were being produced in 36 different shapes and sizes. Unfortunately, the cigar industry suffered great losses in the late 20s and early 1930s due to the Great Depression, and later again due to a mass exodus of immigrants during World War II. Despite a slight recovery after the war, Ybor City would never return to its glory days, but after urban renewal projects in the city began tearing down parts of the historic district in 1965, a local movement began to preserve the remaining important buildings. All right, so that's what I love, is to preserve that history. And what you have here in this museum, you're going to see a lot of history on Vicente Martinez Ybor and the founders.
You'll find it.
All right. And that social club is down here, she said.
Yes, same directions except you go right to the Italian Club.
Right.
So both on 7th Avenue, either way, you'll run into something you're looking for. No problem.
Look at the life of an Afro-Cuban woman who was instrumental in helping Cuban liberator Jose Marti. ABC Action News in-depth reporter Anthony Hill spoke with two historians about the legacy Paulina Pedroso left behind in Tampa and in Cuba.
Marti treated her like a mother in the sense that she was very protective of him, and he appreciated that.
She's known as the Black Mother of Cuban independence leader Jose Marti, an Afro-Cubana who moved to Ybor City in 1892 by way of Key West.
So many Cubans went to Key West.
Key West was the sort of the haven of the revolutionists from 1868 on.
This is the story of Paulina Pedroso. When Paulina and her husband came to Tampa, they had saved up enough money to buy land in Ybor City and built a boarding house.
There was a huge demand for boarding houses in Ybor City because there were many single men who were cigar workers.
This is where Paulina's house used to be. It was knocked down in the 1950s and is now the Jose Marti Park.
Marti would often come to Tampa, and on one of his trips here, there was an assassination attempt when two Spaniards poisoned his wine.
A doctor was called and he was taken to the boarding house, and there he was ministered to, and therefore Paulina became his nurse and his defender.
What they decided was that Marti was not safe in a public hotel. In order to avoid future dangers of that sort, he stayed at their boarding house.
Marti grew fond of Paulina.
He would go out and with Paulina Pedroso and walk up and down the avenues of Ybor City with her, with her arm, you know.
And this was part of the, do you see what that guy's doing?
And this was not a common sight, obviously. So this was a way of him performing this racial unity, and he did that with her.
Marti wanted to unite all Cubans, regardless of race.
There was a lot of pressure on white Cubans to distance themselves from Black Cubans.
He believed in a free and independent Cuba, and Paulina was instrumental in helping Marti raise money in Tampa to fund the War of Independence in Cuba.
She would exhort the workers, come on, pony up, we got to do this.
After living in Ybor City for 18 years and contributing to this community, she decided to move back to Cuba.
She was going blind, she was very ill, and so she went home, which was common for people to go home, and she basically wanted to die on her home soil.
Paulina carried around an autographed photograph of Marti.
The one thing that she requested for when she died was that she be buried with that photograph in her casket.
She died a poor woman in Cuba in 1925.
Paulina Pedroso was inducted into the Florida Women's Hall of Fame in 1993, and her legacy as a leader working for the greater good of the community still lives on. In Ybor City, I'm in-depth reporter Anthony Hill, ABC Action News.
All right, Jose Marti, also known as Jose Julian Marti Perez, He was a Cuban nationalist, poet, philosopher, journalist, translator, professor, and publisher who is considered a Cuban national hero because of his role in the liberation of his country from Spain. He was also an important figure in Latin American literature. All right, so Marti called for a final necessary war against Spain to liberate Cuba and combat the legacy of slavery, racial inequality. He aspired to create a republic for all. Marti died in battle in May 1895 during Cuba's Third War of Independence. Okay, now what I'll say about Jose Marti is, to him, it was unnatural that Cuba was controlled and oppressed by the Spanish government when it had its own unique identity and culture. In his pamphlet from February 11, 1873, called The Spanish Republic and the Cuban Revolution, he argued that Cubans do not live as Spaniards live. All right, so this is Paulina Pedroso. She was a businesswoman. Her and her husband moved from Cuba, immigrated to Florida, and she invested in property. She had a couple casitas that she would give to, almost like an Airbnb, right, to cigar workers and immigrants from Cuba as well. And when Jose Marti would stay in Tampa, he stayed at her house. He was arm in arm with her. She was almost like a mother to him, and she was very influential in the Cuban Revolution of uniting Cuba. That's what he wanted. He didn't want to have the black Cubans separate from the white Cubans. Okay, that was his whole idea of having a united Cuba. All right, and Pedroso was heavily involved in activism. She aided other black Cubans in forming La Sociedad Libres along with her husband. The group was formed to arm rebels against the Spanish government for the liberation of Cuba. This organization eventually became the Sociedad La Union Marti Maceo. All right, and as you can see, this statue here is a historical monument that if you are ever in Tampa on the Riverwalk, you will see this statue honoring Paulina Pedroso. All right, so these are cigar workers in Ybor City in Tampa. Like I said earlier, 15% of them were Afro-Cubans. During this time in America, you're talking about Jim Crow laws, segregation. There were tons of wars. You had first the Haitian Revolution in 1804. You had the American Indian Wars. You had the Indian Wars. You had the American Revolution. There was so much going on. You had the Indian Removal Act. You had the Seminole Wars, which were going on. Here is a Seminole Indian here in Florida. There was so much going on at the time. So the Cuban Revolution was happening towards the end of the 1900s, and this is General Antonio Maceo, right? Another Afro-Cubano, all right? And he was a general in the Cuban army who worked alongside Jose Marti, and they ended up both dying in battle. So they did not get to see the Cuban independence, which they fought for, but they lived on as heroes in Cuba because they would get their independence in 1898. General Maceo died on December 7th, 1896 at age 51. He's always been honored throughout Cuba and Cuban history. All right, so going back to the United States, Cubans were heavily in Florida, right? Being only 90 miles from Key West, right? So 90 miles from Cuba and Key West, you see that point there. Now, clubs started to form in the cigar industry. You had the Italian club, you had the Cuban club, but because of the pressures, because of Jim Crow, segregation, the South, slavery, they would not allow the white Cubans and black Cubans to belong to a club together. So they formed their own club, which was the Afro-Cuban Club. Unfortunately, they could not be in the same club because of the times that we were living in. Everything was built on race in America at that time, right? Everything was a racial construct. Cubans were almost being forced to be African Americans when they were really Cubans. They have different culture, they have different language, they come from a different background. But once they got to America, they wanted to put them into that box and say, no, you're going to be this and you're not going to be that. But they kept their identity. This is the Afro-Cuban Club that is still here to this day. It's a venue you can rent out. They have all types of stuff that still goes on here. This is on 7th Avenue in Ybor City. So I will do a tour later on maybe 2 or 3 videos from now. I'm going to show you guys around Ybor City and give you guys a full tour of the city. We're just doing the museums and the history right now, so you guys can understand a background of how Ybor City was built and what it is now today and the future of Ybor. But this building still stands there to this day. All right, you guys, there's about 10 or 12 minutes left in the video. Thank you guys for watching thus far. All right, and what I have to say is this museum is impressive. It has lots of fun facts, lots of history, lots of culture about Ybor City and how it started from just a swamp town along the Hillsborough River from West Tampa, Ybor City, Vicente Martinez Ybor, the immigrants coming in, and how it turned into a bustling cigar industrial empire, pretty much manufacturing empire with the cigar industry. And it's quite impressive. I love the history, I love the culture, from the food to everything, right? And that's why this museum, I would definitely give this a 10 out of 10. Okay, I always tell you guys when you see me do museum videos and things like that, fact check. Don't take my word for it, don't take the museum's word for it. Look for historical documents. Look for historical texts. We have access to all the encyclopedias, all the maps that were created prior to the maps that we have now. We can find out locations and names of cities prior to us getting here. We can find out who the actual people were that were living here before we got here. All the information is out there. We're in the information age. You just have to do your own research in your own heart and soul, body and mind to want to go do that, right? So I love history. I'm a history buff. This is spot on. Lots of good information here. If you guys want to learn about Tampa and its history in Ybor City, this is definitely a great place to go. All right, so next we're going to check out the garden that is to the side of the building that has a lot of fun events and things that happen there, lots of gatherings. And then we're going to go to the park across the street and we'll conclude the video. I'll see you guys on the next one. I'm out. This is the Ybor Art Studios. As you hear the roosters going off. This is the Ybor Art Studios here. There's another park here. I'm gonna head to the Columbia. Oh wow, they actually have pieces. That's a big one. That's a biggie. Cigar in here.